With the DCU in full swing, we finally have an opportunity to see some of our favorite DC characters given the respect that they deserve in live action. And this is obviously something that DC Studios is making their top priority because of the fact that it's been stated that they're going to use their major characters like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman to help prop up their lesser known characters. And we've already seen this plan start to take shape in projects like Superman, in which that movie introduced us to characters like Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl. While a lot of comic fans probably already know who those characters are, a lot of casual fans didn't, and that movie put them to the forefront for those specific people. But that brings me to the topic of this video, and that topic is, what characters do I think deserve projects in the DCU? And while my list may include some characters that are already pretty well known, I still think that those characters belong on the list because I think that their lore and mythos should be explored even more. But before we get into the video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you enjoy the content, and also hit the hype button if you have that feature available. It would really mean a lot. Diving right in, the first character on my list that I believe deserves a project is none other than Nightwing. Now, even though Nightwing is already considered a household name amongst the DC fans, I don't think that Nightwing has truly been represented properly in live action. Obviously, you could point to things like Titans, but let's just be real, a lot of people don't like Titans, and it's not as popular as some people may think. A lot of Nightwing / Dick Grayson's notoriety comes from his animated adaptations like Teen Titans, Young Justice, etc. And I honestly think that it's time for that to change because the character of Dick Grayson has so much lore and mythos that they could explore in a live action setting. And with the DCU actually having good direction, I think that this is the perfect opportunity to do it. Obviously, if you guys saw my last video, you know that Dick Grayson plays a major role in the Teen Titans saga that I created, and obviously that should be the case because Nightwing is the leader of the Titans. But I also think on top of that, we should get some solo projects for Nightwing. Now, personally, if it were up to me, because of the fact that Nightwing is essentially going to have a Titans trilogy and multiple appearances in Young Justice if we go based off of my Titan saga, I think that a Nightwing solo TV series would fit him a lot better than a movie trilogy. And that's specifically because of the fact that we'd get to spend a lot more time with the character. With a movie, on average, you're getting about 2 hours of content, whereas a show, you can get 8 hours of content in one season. And that's if they decide to limit the TV show to 8 one-hour episodes. Some TV shows like Daredevil go even higher than that. And in this show, you can explore Nightwing's early years in Bloodhaven and how he builds himself into the hero that we all know and love. You could also dive into his more personal rivalries with villains such as Deathstroke, Blockbuster, Shrike, and Lady Vic. So for that reason, Nightwing is number 1 on my list. Moving on to number 2 on my list, I have Jean-Paul Valley Azrael. And this pick is largely because of the fact that Jean-Paul Valley is my favorite Bat family member, but also because of the fact that I genuinely feel like he's such an underrated and underutilized DC character, not only in the source material, but also in other mediums. Obviously, his claim to fame is his arc in Nightfall when he takes up the mantle of Batman after Batman gets his back broken by Bane. And with us already knowing that Bane exists in the DCU because of him getting a movie with Deathstroke, I think that it's a perfect segue to say that Azrael exists in this universe because there's no way we have Bane and Nightfall hasn't happened in the DCU. That's literally Bane's big coming out party. And beyond Nightfall, Jean-Paul Valley Azrael has such a great character arc in the source material, and he also has great lore and mythos. And the diversity in his lore and mythos is something that makes not only the DC universe so great, but also the Batman mythos so great because Azrael is a Batman related character. But when you go to Azrael's corner, not only is there religious elements to his character, there's also a very medieval Knights of the Templar dark fantasy vibe with Azrael's character as well. And that largely stems from his ties with the Order of Saint Dumas. And for those of you who don't know, the Order of Saint Dumas is a religious medieval cult that utilizes alchemy, science, ancient martial arts, and religious manipulation to create their Azrael warriors. And their Azrael warriors are essentially their enforcers or angels of vengeance. I think a live action HBO Max series of Jean-Paul Valley Azrael uncovering the corruption of this cult and also regaining the trust of the Bat family while simultaneously finding his place in the world as a hero would be perfect. And this is again because of the fact that it's such a different look at superheroes from what we've usually seen. It's genuinely just dark fantasy meets Batman. And again, personally, I would love to see that world explored, and I would love to see how the DCU connects Batman to it. A run that I would recommend so you guys understand the vibe that I'm describing is Azrael 1995 by Denny O'Neil. If you're a comic fan, you know that Denny O'Neil is without a doubt one of the greatest comic writers of all time, and Azrael 1995, aka Azrael Agent of the Bat, is just one of his best pieces of work. It's genuinely just a peak run from start to finish. Moving on to number 3, I have The Question. And I've been seeing a lot of people recommend The Question as a character who needs a project in the DCU, and I couldn't agree more. One of the things that I've consistently said that DC needs to do a better job with is advertising and or promoting their street tier characters. Outside of the main Bat family like Nightwing, Batman, the Robins, and any of the villains that are connected to the Bat family, the street tier realm in DC is largely left unexplored, especially in the live action area. And as I just mentioned with Azrael, I think that the DCU is the perfect opportunity to take full advantage of this. With the question, you have a very grounded noir detective who relies on his martial arts skills and his wit to navigate the overall fantastical DC universe. With how the DCU is currently being set up right now with governments, metahumans, and corporations, I think that this is the perfect time to introduce someone like the Question because of his conspiracy-minded way of thinking. I think that a live-action show of him investigating governments and corporations would be a beautiful project for them to incorporate into the DCU. I don't know about you guys, but I personally would want Matt Reeves to direct this project. I just feel like he would cook so hard on this type of project. The next person I think deserves a project in this universe is Green Arrow. Now, yes, Green Arrow is a pretty popular DC character and he has had live-action appearances in things like Arrow, but in this universe, I want a more comic-accurate, true adaptation of Green Arrow because let's face it, Arrow was pretty much Green Arrow if he was Batman. And while a lot of people still think that the show was good, I think that if you truly embrace Green Arrow's lore and mythos, I think he could get a much better project. Whether that's another live action show or a movie, I don't really care. I just think that he definitely needs more representation going forward in the DCU. And I also think we should explore the Arrow family and introduce characters like Roy Harper, obviously, Connor Hawke, etc. It would also be really nice to see his dynamic with other characters like Black Canary as well. Speaking of Green Arrow and Black Canary, the next spot isn't really a singular character, it's more so a particular area of the DC universe, and that is the martial arts underground. Those characters consist of a lot of high-ranking assassins and martial artists throughout the DC universe. So characters like Lady Shiva, Bronze Tiger, Richard Dragon, Connor Hawke, Cassandra Cain, David Cain, Constantine Draken, Cheshire, etc., etc. Pretty much any DC martial artist that you can think of. So you could also throw in Deathstroke, Batman, any Batman-related character like the Bat family members, just martial artists in DC. I need a specific project or multiple projects that flesh out this area of DC because DC martial artists are some of the most broken characters in their source material. The things that some of these regular humans are able to do because of their martial arts skills is so ridiculous that it has to be showcased in live action. This is why they're able to coexist in this world full of gods and monsters. Batman is a perfect example of it, and he's had run-ins and or encounters with a lot of these characters in hand-to-hand. So again, this is definitely an area that I would love to see fleshed out in the DCU, and I can make an entire video on this topic alone. If this is something that you guys are interested in, just let me know in the comments and I'll gladly start cooking up that video. Moving on to number 6, I have the team that predates the Justice League in the source material, and that team is the Justice Society of America. Not only is it already confirmed that they exist within the DCU because of the mural that we saw in Superman 2025, the Justice Society just objectively is one of DC's premier teams, and they should get that respect in live action. I think that a prequel live action Justice Society of America movie would be perfect in the DCU. And with us potentially getting characters like Sergeant Rock in the DCU with his live action movie, I think that they could easily have the JSA movie take place in that same exact era and have it tie in. And in my opinion, it would also be a really cool way to flesh out the legacy characters that we see later on in the DCU, like the other Green Lanterns and the other Flashes. Moving on to number 7, I have the Legion of Superheroes. Now, even though this one is probably a little bit more convoluted to do because of the fact that they're a team set in the 31st century, I still think that because of the wacky, fantastical, whimsical elements of this universe, it's easily possible. And I would actually love if the DCU Superman had ties to the Legion of Superheroes like he does in the source material when he was a child. And that way we could actually see Superman as Superboy when he was a kid. And even though in Superman it's told to us in the movie that it's been 3 years since he announced himself as Superman, again, Superboy is a different thing, and he was more underground when he acted as Superboy, so a lot of people in the world probably wouldn't even know that he existed anyway. And again, because of the fact that he was helping the Legion of Superheroes in the future, and that's largely where he operated, it would make sense for people to not know who Superman is before he comes out as Superman. It also, to me, makes a little bit more sense for Superman to utilize his powers to save people when he's a kid, because I don't think that Superman would wait 15 to 20 years after he already knows he has powers that he can use for good to start saving people. Next up at number 8, I have Martian Manhunter. And this one is honestly long overdue considering that Martian Manhunter is a founding member of the Justice League, and he's probably the only founding member of the Justice League that hasn't really gotten any shine outside of Justice League projects. Now, sure, you could argue that this is because of the fact that in the source material, he doesn't really have that much good lore to pull from, but I think that a backstory for him showcasing his history on Mars and his origins would be a really good prequel story to do in the DCU. And in doing so, it could potentially inspire more writers to expand his lore in the source material. material. But even if Martian Manhunter doesn't get a solo project within the DCU, I just think that we need to see more of Martian Manhunter in the DCU. So he should essentially just have a really large presence over the course of the DCU's tenure. The next person that I think absolutely needs a project in the DCU is none other than John Constantine. And this is specifically because of the fact that he can be the gateway to all magic users in this universe. Obviously, we already know that we're getting a Swamp Thing horror film in the DCU, and even though that project is a ways out, I still think that us simply knowing that Swamp Thing exists in this universe creates the opportunity for John Constantine to also exist within this universe. And introducing John Constantine can simply open the door for, again, a lot of other magic users in the DC universe, like Zatanna, Dr. Fate, Deadman, who's not really a magic user, but is more so a supernatural force, but he still fits in the genre that I'm discussing right now. But other characters include Etrigan, Felix Faust, Mordru, etc., etc. And I think that the magic area of DC is something that also needs to be explored more in live action. And again, Constantine is simply the way to go because not only is he a really good magic user in the DC universe, he's also a fan favorite. And lastly, at number 10, I think that Ra's al Ghul deserves some kind of project in this universe. And I have a very specific vision of what I would want this project to be. And that vision is a Ra's al Ghul anthology series. Now, obviously, this is because in the comics, Ra's al Ghul is immortal and is centuries old, meaning that there's different time periods in his history that you could jump back and forth to. And because Ra's al Ghul is stated to be 1,000 years old in the source material, I would have this anthology series be 10 episodes. And each episode would take place in a different century. And it would basically showcase not only the origin of Ra's al Ghul, but also his rise to power and the way he builds the League of Assassins throughout history. You can also feature characters like Vandal Savage, who is another immortal in the DC universe and another prominent historical figure in the DC universe. And for the last episode specifically, I would want it to take place in the current century and showcase Ra's al Ghul facing off against Batman in the iconic Demon Tale stories. And not only can this finale adapt those iconic stories, but we could also get a recreation of the iconic desert fight between Ra's al Ghul and Batman. And to me, that would just be really cool to see in this universe, especially considering that we're going to get Damian Wayne in this universe and he'll have pre-existing history with Ra's al Ghul. This project could just serve as another way to flesh out the lore that we haven't seen on screen. But overall, those are the 10 characters that I would want to see get projects in the DCU, and that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and also hype the video again if you have that feature available. And as always, it's been K the God. I'll catch you boys in the next one.